There is no press conference at Ohio State today. That rules out a normal Talking Tuesday. Ryan Day just talked on Sunday, so maybe you don't need a hypothetical Talking Tuesday. What does that mean we should talk about, Bill? Because we still got to talk about the Buckeyes. How about Transfer Tuesday?
Okay. I like it.
That's right. It is Tuesday on the Podcast Daily. He is Bill Landis. I am Austin Ward. There is an intersection of things that Ohio State talked about. You and I were kicking around last week on a Talking Tuesday. What would happen with transfer portal season and the college football playoff? Could Ohio State keep some of these players that are eventually going to leave the program on the roster throughout, I don't know, first round, quarterfinals, semifinals, championship game, the whole way through? The answer is maybe. Yes, they can do it, but it is going to be a case-by-case basis. So the answer is yes, it is possible. And will it happen for everyone? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll have to see who else decides they want to put their name out there, right? It's a very, as we discussed last week, I think it's a pretty strange situation that these players are put in with the calendar set up the way it is. So my guess would be that maybe most of the guys who put their name out there wouldn't be part of a playoff push. Not that Ohio State wouldn't welcome them back necessarily. I guess it just depends sort of what your role currently is on the team. If you're a key backup or if you're a special teams guy or whatever that might be. Like if you're a guy who's way down the depth chart, it might be best for both sides, I guess, if you just kind of go about your business and go find that other spot that you're looking for. I guess if you're a playoff team, you don't love the fact that your roster gets depleted as you're trying to practice for a chance or a push to the national championship, but that's the way that it is. But yeah, case by case, we'll see how that balances out when it's all said and done. My guess would be most of those cases would end up being guys who probably don't stay with Ohio State through the end, but there will be some because we know Devin Brown's going to do it.
Yeah, and I think as of Monday afternoon, when Ohio State had 5 guys who had made their portal intentions publicly known by late afternoon, like Gabe Powers is a starter on special teams. Jaden Ballard, we really know what it was, sort of unfulfilled potential, but he'll have no shortage of suitors at wide receiver. Kojo Antweed spent time dealing with injuries, and Miles Walker, who just had not really had an opportunity and was probably going to be a multi-year project at tackle. Like Devin Brown is one of the bigger names that Ohio State could have lost, and maybe many people projected would lose in this offseason based on the assumption that Julian Sayin would be in line to start next season for Ohio State quarterback. He's going to have tons of options, I imagine. But he also is sitting in that sweet spot of conversation for what if you lost your backup quarterback and most experienced option, your safety net, against Tennessee or against Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Like that's the spot that you really would be uncomfortable in if you're Ohio State. And I don't think it's a surprise given the way that Devin Brown has talked about his career and commitment to the program and burning the boats and everything else, that he would want to see this whole process through and not leave Ohio State without their backup quarterback. He just came in the game against Michigan a week and a half ago off the bench. So he remained in position to help Ohio State as a veteran throughout the regular season, and taking that away in the playoffs would have been a pretty big deal, as Georgia could attest after what they had to deal with in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, I think it's probably it's better for Ohio State. It is better for Ohio State. You don't have to qualify it. It's better for Ohio State to have its number 2 quarterback going through this postseason. I'm in the camp of I would have liked to see Julian Sayin play more. Like if Devin Brown were to eventually transfer and then Julian Sayin had to be your backup quarterback in the postseason, but I guess that's a moot point if Devin's going to stick around. I still think Julian could have played more despite that, but that's a different conversation, I guess. I think it's good to have him around. I think it falls sort of in line with the way that he's handled his business at Ohio State. On some level, I find it impressive that Devin Brown has been sticking with it for this long through 2 quarterback competitions. One that, well, I guess really like one true competition, but a competition that he was, pretty back and forth with. And Ryan Day admitted there was a time where he thought Devin Brown might be this team's starting quarterback. And then he stuck through it again when they brought in Will Howard and brought in Julian Sayin, and the writing was still kind of on the wall then. And I think that makes him a good kind of program guy and a guy you want around your team for this postseason. And God forbid, should anything happen in a game, you have a guy who's at least played a little bit you could throw out there who the team seems to like and rally around when he does play. So that's good. And I'll be curious, like, how Devin Brown handles this. Like, the logistics of it seem incredibly difficult to me. Because it's not like you can wait. Like, if Ohio State goes on a run to a national title game, you can't wait until January 21st to decide where you want to go, because most teams will have made their decisions by then. So I don't know if that means like Devin has to have conversations with teams while he's preparing to play for Ohio State. If Devin's people are the ones handling that, maybe they can bring stuff to him. I don't know. He's a pretty mature kid. He's older. I think he'll have a pretty good handle on how to balance all of that. But I would imagine it's quite stressful to figure out your future while still being the number 2 quarterback on a team that is currently in the college football playoff.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we haven't seen this all that frequently when players make their decision to go. Like, they have a lot on their plate. They want to take visits to go see other campuses. Speculating wildly, maybe that means Devin Brown already has an idea of where he might want to wind up. I don't know.
Sure.
We have not talked to him about that. And you do see this happen pretty frequently with players in the transfer portal where the day that they announce that they're going, they already have do not contact tags on, or have a short list of schools where they might wind up, or schools are reporting that player's a target here. And imagine that. How does that occur? I don't know if that's going to be what happens with Devin Brown. I have no insight on that process, because I'm curious what you think. I thought there was a world where Devin Brown might take his chances all the way through next spring again, based on the way he's carried himself, the way, his self-belief, his self-confidence, the veteran ability, the fact that he was still ahead, really throughout this entire season, through the entire regular season, as the backup ahead of Julian Sayin, that, maybe that would not have surprised me. I guess I don't know how likely I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, but it wouldn't be a 1. It may be a 4.
Yeah, I might go higher than that. I would have said, if you would have asked me last week, do you think Devin Brown might have a last stand here in the spring and try to win this job one more time against either Julian Sayin or Aaron Oland or Lincoln Kienholz, any one of those 3, I probably would have said yes, like more likely than not. And then if he didn't like where he was positioned coming out of spring ball, then he could have transferred after that. But maybe the timeline's so accelerated now. The portal is so competitive. Teams want answers immediately. Academic calendars being what they are, maybe that doesn't feel like a viable option for a lot of guys to like wait it out until the end of spring. You want as many possibilities and pathways as possible, I would guess. So you want to do it earlier. But I've been wrong several times now about Devin Brown and my hunch on whether or not he might leave. So, and clearly my lean was that he would leave in previous instances. So if I were asked again, I would just say, I don't know, man. The guy's kind of a cut from a different cloth when it comes to this stuff. So I guess I am mildly surprised that he's doing this now. But if you take everything into account, it definitely makes sense.
There has been just an incredible amount of conversation about Devin Brown over the last 3 years for someone who's going to wind up having played, assuming good health for Will Howard throughout the playoff, and you knock on wood for that for Ohio State, like quite sparingly because of coming up short in that quarterback competition with Kyle McCord initially. And then when it seemed like maybe there was a chance for him to play off the bench, suffering that injury mid-season last year and short-circuiting that, and then getting hurt again in the Cotton Bowl. And, just a couple flashes here and there in his 3rd year in the program, the touchdown to Jeremiah Smith coming off the bench at against Michigan State will be a great memory, and one that he came out and talked about, and the most talked about one passing attempt performance maybe in Ohio State history. Like, it's kind of complicated to wrap up a legacy for someone who barely played, but like, how do you think he's going to be remembered, assuming that this is the end and he doesn't have to play in the playoff?
I think people value loyalty. So and Devin's been very loyal to Ohio State in situations where I think maybe 9 out of 10 quarterbacks in the same position perhaps would not have been. And I'm not saying Ohio State handled its business the wrong way. It's just, it's big boy college football, and Ohio State has to make sure that it's doing whatever it can to put the best quarterback out on the field and keep that room competitive, but there's just so much movement with the position that it is rather astonishing that Devin has stuck it through as long as he has. So I think he'll be thought of fondly for that. I'm sure there's been some fatigue too with the way that he's been discussed, but I would hope that's really no fault of his, right? That's more on us. I would think, like, personality wise, I don't know there's a whole lot to dislike about Devin Brown. Seems like a guy who works really hard. Had some moments when he came into the games. It's weird, like the moments where he has played as like a pure backup in like garbage time, whatever you want to call it, have actually, I don't think, been all that impressive. But when he's had to come into somewhat high leverage situations, if you remove the Cotton Bowl because he got hurt, but like that Michigan State game, the Purdue game where they like used him as a red zone quarterback, and he was that the game he got hurt? He got hurt against Penn State, but right, it was Penn State, right? That he got hurt against.
Yeah, the Purdue one was the debut of the package, and it was a mixed bag. They put him in, and he rushed for a touchdown. He also fumbled at the goal line and nearly threw an interception.
And that's right. Yeah,
it was like. But he also threw the deep ball, touchdown. It was like all over the map, like everything in once, which was kind of emblematic of the thing that we talked about in August. It was like extreme highs and lows with Devin Brown, which is not to go back and relitigate everything that happened at that point. But even in that one game, it was like, okay, you're hang on tight because it's going up and down here.
Yeah, I think there was more. I think like interest in what Devin Brown could be for this team last year than there was this year, because Will Howard, until the Michigan game, had played very well. Everyone was excited about Julian and Air. So it's a different dynamic, but I think, how fondly will he be looked back on? I don't know. It's not like the book is full with moments for people to look back on one way or the other, but I think it will come back down to like a guy who just kind of handled his business the right way and was like an upstanding Buckeye. And I think that can be good enough for people to want to see him do well and wherever he ends up going next.
I remember all of the conversations, we'd have it with Berm, and he would say, oh, this guy carries himself like Joe Burrow, and made those comparisons right away when he signed. And I kept saying throughout the whole process, yeah, but remember how long it took Joe Burrow to become Joe Burrow. Like by the time he left, he still was not a ready-made product at LSU. He was not a number one draft pick. He wasn't going to go, didn't immediately win a national championship with LSU. And I don't want to put this kind of pressure on him for his next stop, but like he's at that juncture where he had to make a decision to leave, just like Joe Burrow did. And if this is a spot where the Buckeyes have conveyed this directly or not, it does seem like they are trending in a different direction towards Julian Sayin, in the same way that it was becoming pretty apparent to Joe Burrow that Dwayne Haskins was going to win the starting job at that point for the Buckeyes. And LSU wound up with a very mature, very self-confident, self-possessed, like intelligent football player that once you surrounded him with other athletes and allowed him to continue to mature physically, which is again the part where I thought was worth a comparison for Joe Burrow and Devin Brown, and a reminder that like the arm strength needed some time for Joe Burrow before it came along. The consistency with the accuracy, it was not always apparent in every single practice that we saw when Joe Burrow was here, and it definitely wasn't the case for Devin Brown. So like part of me does kind of wish that there was that opportunity to see if that jump could happen in spring. I would not have imagined that he would win a competition if he went back out there again against Julian Sayin or even Lincoln Keenholz. I don't know. But I wouldn't have given Joe Burrow much chance of beating out Dwayne Haskins. We all know how that story ended, and I'm not saying that should have gone a different way either, but wherever Devin Brown goes, like I think Ohio State fans will want to follow that as closely as they did Joe Burrow, and it won't be a situation maybe where they wonder what could have happened. They can maybe just legitimately pull for him. I don't know where that's going to be. I don't know what the right landing spot is for him, but I'm not going to rule out the possibility that he gets a feel-good ending to his career somewhere else the same way that Joe did.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. If I'm like, so I remember I was pretty quickly like in the Dwayne Haskins camp, like a lot of people were. And then in that spring game, I guess in 2018 spring before 2018 fall, where Joe and Dwayne were both out there, both playing really well. I was like, man, is there a way they can keep them both? And clear, like it wasn't possible. But that's if my timelines are correct, like that is the spring that Devin Brown is about to enter too, the spring before your fourth year, right? So, it can absolutely happen for him. And you're right. I'm not trying to put that pressure on him or even make it sound like what Joe Burrow did is like, oh yeah, guys do that all the time. It was a truly special story, and it took Joe 2 years to become what he became in 2019. Even he was good in 2018, but like way better in 2019, right? So that's out there too. But Devin's got a strong arm. He's got the like intangible qualities I think you want in a quarterback. He's been in a pretty high level offensive system for a couple of years, and I think probably learned a decent amount about the trade. Under a couple different position coaches and Ryan Day, who's regarded as one of the better kind of passing game minds in the sport, I think still. So that should all be pretty attractive for him. He's got some stuff to polish up. Like he's got to be more consistent with his passing, more accurate on stuff that's not way down the field. I think find a way to get back to showing a little more of the athleticism that I thought was like really apparent on his high school film, but has been less apparent while he's been playing at Ohio State, which has always been a little bit puzzling for me and you, and I think a lot of other people. So, but there's stuff to work with there, which is why he'll have, I think, tremendous opportunities. I know like a very obvious one, like Utah, like doesn't have any quarterbacks on its roster right now. Maybe that's a spot that would give Devin a look, but really anywhere. And I think as long as it's not a Big Ten team that Ohio State could end up playing, that he's a guy who's curried a decent amount of favor with Ohio State fans, and I'm sure they'll be eager to see how he does as long as he's not doing it against Ohio State at any point.
I think that's also what makes this so intriguing is that like Ohio State is losing a veteran, whether he was going to be the starter or not. They're going to need someone with that level of college football experience on the roster. So, does that mean that in salary cap allocation that changes the equation for Lincoln Kienholz? Because again, we're talking about, we try not to do this on the podcast daily. Players' decisions are their own. We're not trying to put enhanced pressure on them or, whatever, speculation, break news, work in the rumor mill. We're not trying to do any of that, but this has been going on for more than a year with Kienholz, where like Iowa and Wisconsin are constantly mentioned as teams that want to be involved with Lincoln Kienholz. Mm-hmm. And now the situation has to change from, can Devin Brown compete, to would Lincoln Kienholz do that? And with a couple of years in the system, would his value be enhanced more to Ohio State to at least stick it out through spring and see what happens with Julian Sayin, potentially Aaron Nolan, Tavian St. Clair when he arrives? Because otherwise you're now talking about Ohio State needing to take someone out of the portal as a veteran stopgap option, whether that's a Chris Chuganoff type or whatever else. But like, this is even if the line of succession seems clear with Julian Sayin, which I think we both agree that that's likely to happen for the Buckeyes. Yeah. The overall state of the position is in a pretty weird state. And it is helpful that Devin Brown is stabilizing that throughout the playoff. But once the playoff ends, like 2025 starts right then, and that's a sticky one.
It's a pretty young room, right? Because even Lincoln Kienholz, if he's there, as we mentioned several times, like he's kind of been only a quarterback for like 2 years now, right? He was a multi-sport athlete and just takes up a lot of your time, and it's just like really in the last year, I bet he feels like he's been really able to kind of lock in on playing quarterback, and it's a jump up in competition. It's like, and it's just a question like, is he ready to lead the room? Or is Julian Sayin ready to lead the room if he's the starter? Like, obviously there are leadership qualities that just kind of come with the job if you're the starter, but the lack of like an older guy in there to help set that tone, to help guys like understand what it is to prepare. It's not something that you can't work around. I think in 2021 was Ohio State in a pretty similar position. They didn't bring in a veteran that year, right? When CJ started for the first time, it was like him and Kyle, and kind of it, if I'm remembering correctly. So like
Well, there were some other names that you might remember from that period in 2021.
oh right, well like Quinn was in there, yeah, but that doesn't, that's my point. It's like, what was that room? I was like, I don't know, a redshirt freshman and 2 freshmen. It's like, okay, so like
And Jack
Lincoln's
Miller.
and Jack Miller. God, what a room, what a time. Forgot about Jack Miller. My apologies to the
I was gonna say 2021 was a wild time.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think Ohio State probably would not need, but want to add a quarterback either way. If everything stays the same now and you bring back Julian and Air and Lincoln, which I would bet against just because it's the quarterback position, then you're bringing in Tavian St. Clair. I think you would love to add an older guy. If there's a Tristan Jebius / Chris Chugginoff kind of guy out there that would want to come in and be a quasi quarterbacks coach while being on scholarship and making a little NIL scratch. So we'll see whether or not Ohio State wants to do that. Like talent wise, I think Ohio State's okay. I don't think we're anywhere near the conversation of, do you need to go get one more kind of like plug in stopgap starter like a Will Howard? I think there's belief that Julian Sain is probably the next guy and he'll be ready next fall. But even then, you might still want some veteran experience in that room if you can find some.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. They also clearly need to do that immediately on the offensive line, and you're already seeing like I'm stating the obvious there, but I wonder. We don't know how it'll end. They've already scheduled some visits. Every single day there are starting caliber offensive linemen from other programs going into the portal. Like you can't even keep track of all the names that are out there. But I think Ohio State has been more proactive and more public about that through the early stages of the portal opening on the offensive line, which tells you everything you need to know about where their priorities are. It's not breaking news that it would start with the offensive line, but like that has to be the single biggest investment that they make as this week goes on.
No doubt. And when we saw Miles Walker is going in on what's today, Monday, we're recording this. So,
hey,
sorry to pull back the curtain. I'm talking a lot. The days are running together. I need to do that for myself so I can know what day of the week is. It's not that I was envisioning Miles Walker being much a part of the conversation at tackle next year, but they are very low on tackle bodies for next year's roster. Like if Josh Fryer is out of eligibility, we're not expecting a miracle, pivot from Josh Simmons to come back to Ohio State. And then you're talking about is Zemolowski going to be on the roster next year? I have no idea. So it's like George Fitzpatrick, Ian Moore, Deontay Armstrong, Carter Lowe, or like your true tackle bodies. I guess Tegra Shabola. That is not enough. So I think Ohio State, it obviously needs to find starters, and it probably needs to find 2 starting tackles. It may need to find some starters on the interior as well. But it also probably needs to be aggressive in paying guys to come here to be like depth, to like sell the opportunity to compete, and then hope you have more depth that comes out of that, because it's not stacking up to be a tremendous situation right now.
Yeah, that's why I thought it would be weird to say that I was like stunned by Miles Walker going into the transfer portal, but like at a position where there's clearly very little depth. I wouldn't have thought when the portal opened that would be a name that you would see. Now, people have lots of different motivations and reasons for doing so. And maybe part of that is that Ohio State is being aggressive in scheduling veteran visitors, transfer portal visitors in the week ahead, in the next 2 weeks ahead. Then that, I can't speak to any of that motivation or if they would feel, offended by that, but everyone knows the situation here. And I would have thought, sticking it out throughout that process would have been something that was in the cards potentially for Miles Walker. I'm not blaming him for choosing a different path by any stretch of the imagination, but in the positions that I was monitoring on Monday, I didn't think, they might lose a tackle or two. Like that was not, because there aren't that many.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm being honest about what they do have. Like I don't know that there should be anyone, maybe with the exception of George Fitzpatrick, who should be thinking like, well, if I don't get it next year, like when am I going to get it here, right? So like, you shouldn't be threatened by the high likelihood that Ohio State's going to add a couple of starting caliber tackles to your position room, because everyone in that room needs to keep developing, especially Miles Walker. Miles Walker was a developmental tackle from the jump, and then he lost a year basically to injury. So he was kind of just getting started in my mind. And again, I'm not trying to talk down like it or whatever. Like, people make their decisions for whatever reasons they want. Maybe he wants to go back closer to home, or maybe he thinks he's ready to play. I don't know. I think it was unlikely that he was going to be part of the conversation, even from a depth perspective, next year. So it's a loss that Ohio State should be able to work around, but you need at least 8, and I think 8's like bare minimum tackles. And right now they have like 4.5 or 5, because some of these guys are kind of viewed as swing guys between guard and tackle anyway. So I don't know. I kind of feel like they need to go out there and get like 4 tackles in the transfer portal, which is like, I don't even know if that's possible, but I think Ohio State should be trying for it.
Well, it feels like every tackle in the country is putting their name in the portal, just hoping that Ohio State will get involved in the bidding war.
It's not a bad business model right now. Yeah, we thought they would do that with the Josh Simmons year. We're like, they did put the bat signal out and see what happens, and I guess they never really did that. But now they're doing it.
Yeah, this year they did, because it's like, again, I'm not saying that they did this on purpose, but it's like, hey, Josh Simmons, why don't you make your decision public, and also remind people that you got developed into a first-round draft pick the last 2 years with Justin Fry. Like, put that sign up immediately. Do not wait to January. Do it now. Do it now.
Yeah. We wanted to see the bat signal when they got Josh Simmons, and then Josh Simmons became the bat signal.
He is.
How about that?
What a beautiful 2 years of that. So yeah, that's where we're at. That's a Transfer Tuesday. I know that we're going to start talking more about the playoff in probably a Tennessee Tuesday. I'm talking Tuesday next week, but a lot going on with roster management season, and not a press conference to get ready for today. So felt like a nice way to get into some of the movement going on. And also, again, just a tip of hat to Devin Brown for a decision here that it would have been easy for him to. We've seen backup playoff quarterbacks just a year ago. Like, I'm out of here. Good luck. Hope you stay healthy. And that did not happen for Ohio State and for Devin Brown. So, good for him, good for the Buckeyes, and a lot more stuff coming your way throughout the rest of this week as we continue to get ready for the college football playoff. Ohio State, Tennessee, December 21st in prime time at the Horseshoe. But that is going to be a wrap on the podcast daily for Tuesday, talking transfers with Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. Have a great day. We'll see you.